Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Gaynor.
Here we are, just the two of us.
Yes.
If you think you subscribed to the channel, can you just check? We've had a message from a couple of people saying, thought it was subscribed, looked on it, wasn't. So just check it out. We're having a bit of fun with YouTube at the moment, so if you can just check it and let us know. And if you're not, subscribe if you don't mind. We do appreciate it.
We do.
Bit of Cowboy Kent.
Yes.
Pemmican? Would you say that is?
Pemmican, yeah.
The greatest survival food. Never heard
of it.
No, me neither. Let's see what this is. Love watching Cowboy Kent.
Yeah, I do.
It brings a nice smile to my face and gives me great ideas on how to
chappy.
cook. He gave me an idea the other day. I actually made, I don't know if it was his idea, but what he was doing gave me the idea, was Philly cheesesteak deep fried in a pastry.
Yeah.
It was like deep fried Philly cheesesteak pasties.
It's like spring rolls with Philly cheesesteak.
It was absolutely delicious, wasn't it? Mm. Anyway, should we get into this Pemmican, the greatest survival food?
Yeah.
Cowboy Kent.
From the American Indians to the trappers to the traders to the early explorers to us, pemmican, one of the greatest survival foods.
Jerky.
What is that?
One of the most...
It looks like a black pudding.
Looks like jerky a little bit there, the way it's dried. I guess it's dried meat that'll last for a long time.
Yeah, maybe.
Thinking survival food is what I'm thinking.
Iconic survival dishes ever put together. Started a long time ago, it did. Pemmican. Now you may have heard this, you might even seen it on an old Western or an old explorer show where they were eating pemmican. Now really the word derives from the Cree and it means pemmy, which means fat, which back then was probably bison or elk, moose, as the Indians did, and even the explorers that explored all the great Northwest and the Northern Territories, they would just take two rocks together and just pound this meat till they could make a really dry powder. They would take suet, which is the fat that encases kidneys on an animal, whether like it be a bison or a moose or elk, whatever you were using, and they would chop that fat up and then render it down over low heat to where you got all this beautiful golden tallow that come from it. But then they got to think we could mix some chokeberries with it, maybe any kind of berries that we could find, and you let it dry for about...
What did he call them? Chokeberries?
Chokeberries, yeah.
Never heard of those either.
No, me neither.
An hour, and you had pemmican. So today we're really celebrating the American Indian culture and when it was passed down to the frontiersmen, the trappers, the people who explored the West, but even to the South Pole, the North Pole, this pemmican was with them all. So we're starting off, since I don't have any lean meat around here, because looking over here at him, he don't look too lean, and that one ain't got enough meat on him to keep us alive, so we'll just keep them two around. A bottom round or a top round, round is always pretty lean meat. And you can see that there's not a lot of fat on the inside of this, and there is a roadmap to where we should cut first. So we're gonna cut right down this seam because we need to try to get all the fat we can off of this. You can see it's got a chunk right here, so we'll just go ahead and trim this off. Try to remove all the fat you can because fat is really what would make this stuff turn rancid in the end, and we don't need none of that. Back then, it would have been most of the time bison. And they would cut these strips out of them, and we'll just cut one that's a little thicker than what we're going to end up with. And you would just flatten this meat out. Now, if you're a hunter and you've got some venison, some backstrap, whatever in there that's really lean, just use it. But you can see the grain of this meat is running this way. So really, it would be best if we come back across here and just slice this as paper thin as we can. And when it dries, it's even going to be more tender. And you can use a dehydrator, or you can go in the oven. We'll show you both methods here when we get started.
Due to Cowboy Kent, when I made my Philly cheesesteak last week, with my ribeye, what I did, I froze it first slightly.
Put it in the freezer.
Put it in the freezer for a bit and took it out, and it was so easy to slice dead thin, and I was like, I've never even thought of that.
No, yeah.
And it was dead easy to slice, and it just sliced up into tiny little thin strips like he's done there. But it's, because I guess my knife either wasn't sharp enough when I was doing it before, or it wasn't getting to the thin side of what I did. But now when I froze it a little bit, it just went straight through like nice thin strips. Great idea.
Well, see, we started out with 2 roasts there. We ended up using about probably close to 4 pounds of roast when we cut that in strips and trimmed the fat off. So you want to make sure that when you got a finished product here in your bowl, trimmed and sliced, you have at least 2 pounds of lean meat. We're just going to put it on a wire rack. One will go in the dehydrator and one will go in the oven. And oven's a little quicker than a dehydrator, but the dehydrator is really going to get more of the moisture out than the oven will. Now, when you're talking about putting it in the oven, you know, the lowest setting that my oven will go to is 170 degrees. When you slip that in that oven door and you shut it, always just take a pot holder and just shut it to where there's just a little bit of air circulation in there. It's going to help it dry out faster in that oven. It's probably going to take you a minimum of at least 3.5 to 4 hours. And when you get that jerky out of there, you want to make sure that when it just breaks like a cracker, it is that crispy. That way it's going to be a lot easier to grind up or pound, whichever method you want to use. The dehydrator, the same way, but it's probably going to take longer. It's going to be probably close to 8 or 10 hours in a dehydrator. And I should have told you all this when we started. When you go to slice that meat and you're going to make this pemmican, it's best if you go ahead and put that meat in the freezer and let it set about 45 minutes in there. You can slice it a whole lot thinner that way, or if you've got a meat slicer, you can use that.
Designed it.
The Native Americans, when they were making this so long ago, they might have added chokeberries to it, something like that. They don't grow down here where I'm at, so we bought some dried blueberries and dried cranberries. When you're looking at dried fruit there, it's not really got all the moisture out of it. So we put these on some wax paper because they fall through the grates on that dehydrator, and it took them about 13 hours to really dry. We're going to put all this in this blender. Now, the first time I did this recipe, I just used a little magic bullet, but it took it forever. And you can put them in there whole, but I'm just going to take some of them longer ones and break them up to where I know they'll grind up a little faster. You might ask yourself, why are we saving these pieces? We have a lot of good help scattered around camp today, so we'll put them back over here for the time being. Get the lid on it. Wrong direction. Houston, we have liftoff. You can see when we got through with that, that's pretty much like a meat powder. That's what we're after. But now we're going to grind these berries. They won't grind up near that smooth, I promise you. Good set of scales is really necessary. We're going to weigh this out so we'll know exactly where we're at. Coming at a whopping 8.7 ounces it did. Now you can see there's a little powder to them berries, but when I made that the other day, I ground them up to where they was just ground plumb up. But I like to leave a little of them like this way because it gives a little chewiness to it. Now we need to weigh the tallow out to have about 8.7 ounces. Then we'll heat it up, mix it all together, and make us some pemmican.
What was that you had then?
That's the fat that you was talking about before.
Okay, right.
Dutch oven is here getting hot on the little Camp Chef burner it is, and starting out with a really low heat because you want to make sure you don't burn that oil to begin with. We're going to leave a little out because we can add to it if we need it. When the Native Americans made this, it was really from probably mostly buffalo fat and then buffalo meat. Now, I just got me some really good clean white fat that I could get from the local butcher down here, and most of the time they won't even charge you for it. I think we probably had 3 pounds all together. Put it in a pretty good sized stock pot, put it on low heat, and it's going to take it a while. When that tallow quits bubbling, you've about rendered all the fat out of that meat. Let it cool, then I strained it into a mason jar, and we is good to go.
I'm not going to lie, it doesn't look very appetising.
Do you know what? It kind of doesn't. It doesn't to me because I do like meat-based dishes, and I'm liking the look of them berries inside it as well.
Yeah.
Sort of like it's making my mouth water a little bit. Like I want to try it because I bet that's got a delicious taste to it.
Yeah.
But I've never even seen anything like
No,
this.
I've not.
The closest I've seen obviously was the jerky sort of. I've seen
Yeah.
beef jerky and things
Yeah.
like that, but I've never seen anything sort of like cooked like this.
No, me neither.
But it's making me mouth. I really want to taste that.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what it's like in the end.
And most of the early pioneers and everybody that made this were actually just taking this probably and just forming it in their hand to a loaf or a ball. We're going to put it in here, let it get good and dry, that way we can dump it out. They would claim that usually about the size of a Reese's peanut butter cup, but about that tall, was close to 2,000 calories. They even canned this stuff so many years ago for expeditions. A lot of the Native Americans too that I did research on and looked back for, they said, you know, we traded for sugar, and they would add a little sugar to theirs for a sweetener. When this stuff sets up and when it gets done, and we're gonna set ours in the ice box to quicken up the process, which is a refrigerator, you can actually break part of this off. It's so good to cook with. You've heard of beef bouillon cubes. Well, now you just break off a little bit of this pemmican. You could put it in some stew.
Interesting.
You know, the buffalo was the main source for it. He provided the meat, he provided the fat, but he also provided a skinned bag that they could dry out to carry this in. And they would make pounds and pounds of this because this is what's going to help you get through the winter. So this was something that was not only a survival food, but it was also something that you'd take when you were out on a long hunting trip. This pemmican at room temperature, usually wrapped in like a wax paper or even brown paper sack and sealed up tight, 1 to 5 years just sitting out.
For men and dogs.
Yeah.
Not women.
But you can put this like in the cellar at your house where it's a cool, dark place. It's indefinite. In Canada, the old settlers up there actually make a soup or a stew out of pemmican with this and whatever vegetables you could pick up going along the way. I think they call it rababou. Now, I know that's probably good butchered up the word, but it is a famous soup there. You know, pemmican was a great food to get through hard times. Have you ever had pemmican before?
I have not.
Just break you off a piece and go to town there.
It's very dense.
Mm-hmm.
It smells like old beef stock.
It's not bad. You get that beefy flavor.
It's beefy, and then you get the little cranberry. It's
Yeah.
nice, and then at the end, it's not so nice.
I mean,
if I were needing to survive, it would be. I mean, you're eating it up.
Yeah.
You like it?
I've eaten a lot worse things in my life. I could get by on this. I can remember when I didn't have nothing, I would have been glad to have it. But
Oh, and you know what's so funny that you made this is because I just finished a book called The Endurance. A lot of you guys might know about it. But it was about the 1914 South Pole expedition with Ernest Shackleton. And then we also watched the
documentary on it.
documentary, but it was very good.
Yes,
and
it was.
they ate pemmican, and thank God they did,
Yeah.
because it got them through some hard times. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the concoction. I'm glad that I don't have to be eating it. Okay, so I'm gonna peace out.
Yeah, I get
This is
that.
not too
Yeah.
bad. This is better than first batch.
Was it?
Well, we'd sure like to thank y'all for tuning in and watching this episode. I love the history episodes to go back in time and really show you about what happened and really how it's evolved through all of this. And it is something that I think we should be very thankful to for all the history that's been passed down to us. But as always, a very special tribute to all the servicemen and women and all the veterans who have kept that old flag flying over camp. I'd like to leave you with this quote from Ronald Reagan, who said, "We are one nation under God, but when we forget God, we are a nation going under." Remember, let's be a better neighbor, and it all starts with me and you. God bless you, each and every one. Get in here close. I'm going to give you a big hug, and I'll see you down the Pemmican Trail.
I kind of get it with that pemmican. It's clustered. It's not heavy. It's not big to carry around.
Yeah.
But it's got 2,000 calories and
Calories.
something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
After I've
it's going to
watched,
keep you going.
Yeah, after I've watched these, I always want to try and cook it. This is one that I don't want to try.
No, I kind of agree. When he was mixing it in the pot, I thought I want to try that because it's beef and it's got the mixture of the fruit, and I thought I might quite like that. But then when I see it in that form and I seen her face,
Yeah.
I was like, maybe not.
No.
And I think Ken even was like a little bit, I can get by on it, but
Yeah,
it's not a great taste.
it's not a choice.
But I don't think it's there. I don't think it's there for that reason. I don't think it's something you cook up and make unless you're doing what they're doing there.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll see that many places.
No. It looks. No, it doesn't look very.
But I
appetizing.
get the reason for it.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. But the soup looked good though. Making it into a soup.
Well, I thought it looks a bit greasy, but obviously there's a lot of kind of fighting there to make it. So.
But what you're doing as well, though, if you're out in the wilderness for months on end, and you might just come across some certain vegetables you might be able to put in a pot, boil it up, and put that in to give it that flavour, and all of a sudden you've got a decent soup type thing.
It's more like a beef stock cube, she said,
There you go. Pemmican. First time I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, I've never heard
of it. Never heard of it mentioned, never heard it talked about, nothing.
No.
First time I've seen it.
Yeah.
Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.